The Zephyr's edge drifted through the Kepler 442 system like a particularly lost tourist who'd taken one too many wrong turns at the galactic equivalent of Albuquerque, which, coincidentally, was exactly what had happened to Captain Derek Holbrook about 3 weeks ago when his navigation AI decided to interpret "take us home" as "let's go on a magical mystery tour through uncharted space." Derek was currently sprawled in his captain's chair, a term he used loosely since it was basically a repurposed massage chair he'd salvaged from a defunct spa station, staring at his ship's diagnostic readouts with the kind of resigned acceptance usually reserved for tax audits and root canal procedures. Well, he muttered to himself, because talking to yourself was perfectly normal behavior when you'd been alone in space for the better part of a month. At least the life support's holding steady, silver linings and all that. The Edge wasn't exactly what you'd call a military vessel. She was more of a... Well, if ships had dating profiles, hers would read quirky personality, lots of character, some assembly required. Originally built as a mid-range cargo hauler, she'd been through more owners than a particularly unlucky lottery ticket. Derek had won her in a poker game from a Martian prospector who'd insisted the ship was just going through a rough patch. That rough patch had apparently involved a complete overhaul using spare parts from at least 17 different manufacturers, none of whom had bothered to check if their components were compatible with anything else in the known universe. The result was a ship that worked, technically speaking, but had the aesthetic sensibility of a patchwork quilt designed by someone with severe cataracts. Captain's log, stardate, Derek glanced at his chronometer, which was currently displaying the time in what appeared to be ancient Babylonian numerals. Tuesday, probably. Still lost. Still not dead. Ship's holding together with what I can only assume is pure spite, and whatever force keeps lucky pennies from falling through sidewalk cracks. He was reaching for his lukewarm ration pack. Today's delicacy was labeled beef-style protein chunks, which was about as appetizing as it sounded, when every alarm on the ship decided to throw a synchronized tantrum. "Contact detected," announced Arya, the ship's AI, in the same tone one might use to mention that it looked like rain. "Multiple vessels, unknown configuration, approximately 12,000 kilometers in closing." Derek nearly choked on his protein chunk. In 3 weeks of wandering around this particular corner of nowhere, he'd seen exactly 0 signs of intelligent life. Hell, he'd seen exactly 0 signs of any life, unless you counted the questionable organism growing in the ship's recycling system, and Derek had decided it was better for everyone if he didn't think too hard about that particular situation. Multiple vessels? Derek sat up straighter, suddenly very aware that his ship's defensive capabilities consisted of harsh language and a really loud horn. "How multiple are we talking here?" 17 distinct signatures, Arya replied. "Configuration suggests military vessels. They are rather large." "Define rather large in terms I can understand. Like delivery truck large or city block large?" "More along the lines of small moon large, Captain." Derek felt his stomach drop somewhere into the vicinity of his boots. "Fantastic. Just fantastic. Are they doing anything particularly threatening, or are we still in the ominous hovering phase of first contact?" "They appear to be maintaining a defensive formation. However, I am receiving a communication request on standard diplomatic frequencies." "Standard diplomatic frequencies," Derek repeated slowly. "As in, these guys know about standard diplomatic frequencies. As in, they've met other species before." "That would be the logical assumption, yes." Derek rubbed his temples, trying to massage away the headache that was forming with all the enthusiasm of a flash mob. First contact protocols were, well, they existed, theoretically. Somewhere in the vast bureaucratic maze of Earth's Space Navigation Authority, there was probably a manual thick enough to stop a bullet that outlined exactly what to do in this situation. Unfortunately, Derek had never been particularly good at reading manuals, or following protocols, or making decisions that couldn't be reversed with a heartfelt apology and a bottle of decent whiskey. "All right," he said, standing up and straightening his uniform, a term he used even more loosely than captain's chair, since his current outfit consisted of cargo pants, a t-shirt that read "I break for wormholes," and boots that had seen better decades. "Put them through." "And Arya?" "Yes, Captain." "If this goes badly, make sure the black box includes a note that I died doing something heroic, and not because I was too stubborn to ask for directions." The main screen flickered to life, displaying what Derek could only assume was the bridge of one of the alien vessels. It was impressively large, all sleek surfaces and dramatic lighting, like someone had crossed a spaceship with a high-end nightclub. Standing in the center was a figure that looked vaguely humanoid, if you ignored the 4 arms, the scales, and the fact that its head appeared to be an elegant fusion of reptile and geometric art project. "Greetings, unknown vessel," the alien said, its voice carrying the sort of authority that suggested it was used to being taken seriously. "I am Commander Zexus of the 3rd Hegemony Fleet. You have entered sovereign territory without authorization. State your origin and purpose." Derek blinked. The alien was speaking perfect English, which was either incredibly convenient or incredibly suspicious. Hi there. Captain Derek Holbrook of the, He glanced at his ship registration, which was taped to the console next to a picture of a cat wearing a tiny astronaut helmet. "The Zephyr's Edge, out of Earth." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Commander Zexus froze mid-gesture, his forearms suddenly rigid. In the background, Derek could see other figures on the alien bridge turning toward the screen with expressions that, despite their non-human features, were universally recognizable as, "Oh shit." "Did you say—" Zexus's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. "Did you say Earth?" Yeah?" Derek looked around his own bridge, as if expecting to find someone who could explain why that simple word had apparently triggered an existential crisis among the locals. "Terra Sol 3, the third rock from the sun? Big blue marble, mostly harmless, really into reality television? That Earth." Commander Zexus took what appeared to be a very careful step backward. "Aria," Derek whispered. "Are you recording this?" "Because their reaction suggests they've heard of us, and I'm not sure if that's good or bad." "Recording everything, Captain. And based on their physiological responses, I would estimate they are experiencing significant distress." On-screen, Zexus was having what appeared to be an urgent conversation with his crew, their voices too low to make out clearly. Derek caught fragments, something about protocols and immediate notification, and what sounded suspiciously like, "We're all going to die." "Commander," Derek called out, "is everything okay over there? You look like you've seen a ghost, or the alien equivalent of a ghost. A xenomorph apparition? I'm still working on the terminology." Zexus turned back to the screen, his expression now carefully controlled in the way that suggested someone who was trying very hard not to panic. "Captain Holbrook, I must ask, is your vessel armed?" Derek glanced around his bridge again, taking in the cobbled-together equipment, the jury-rigged repairs, and the fact that his most dangerous-looking console was actually a repurposed gaming system. "Armed." "Well, I've got a really stern voice and a collection of increasingly creative curse words. Does that count?" "Please answer the question seriously, Captain. This is a matter of extreme importance." The tone made Derek straighten up. "No, Commander. The Edge is a civilian vessel. We're about as militarily threatening as a particularly aggressive houseplant." "Why? What's going on here?" Another pause, during which Zexus appeared to be receiving updates from various crew members. Finally, he turned back to Derek with the expression of someone who just realized he was about to deliver some very unwelcome news. "Captain Holbrook, are you aware of your species' reputation in this sector?" "Our reputation?" Derek felt a sinking sensation that had nothing to do with the ship's artificial gravity. "I wasn't aware we had a reputation. We're kind of new to the whole interstellar travel thing. I mean, we've barely managed to not blow ourselves up for more than a few decades running, so we figured we'd take things slow, Zexus exchanged glances with someone off-screen. "Captain, your species is, well, you are classified as a Level 7 aggressive expansion civilization." "Level 7? Derek tried to remember if that was good or bad, on a scale of 1 to 10. Level 10 would be complete galactic sterilization. Derek felt his eyebrows climb toward his hairline. "Wait, hold on. We're a Level 7? Us? Humans? The same species that spent 3 years arguing about whether a hot dog is a sandwich? I assure you, Captain, the classification is based on extensive behavioral analysis and predictive modeling." Zexus was speaking carefully now, like someone trying to explain to a tiger that it might want to consider vegetarianism. "Your species demonstrates remarkable adaptability, aggressive territorial expansion, and a disturbing tendency toward what your own historical records describe as improvised solutions to complex problems." "Improvised solutions?" Derek laughed, a sound that came out slightly more hysterical than he'd intended. "You make it sound like we're some kind of unstoppable force of nature. We're just resourceful, and maybe a little stubborn. And okay, yes, we do have this weird habit of making things work when they really shouldn't, but—" He stopped mid-sentence as a thought occurred to him. "Wait, how do you know about our historical records?" Zexus looked uncomfortable, which was impressive given that his species apparently didn't have facial expressions that translated directly to human norms. "Your species has been observed for some time." "Observed? Derek repeated the words slowly. Like, watching from a distance to make sure we don't accidentally conquer the galaxy, observed? Something like that, yes. Derek slumped back in his chair, trying to process this information. So let me get this straight. You've been watching us. You've decided we're some kind of terrifying space menace. And now I've wandered into your territory in what amounts to a cosmic rust bucket held together with good intentions and questionable engineering decisions. And this is bad? Captain, Zexus said slowly. 3 weeks ago, our long-range sensors detected an unidentified vessel of human origin entering this system. Since then, you have successfully navigated 17 separate hazards that would have destroyed any conventional ship, somehow maintained life support despite what appears to be a completely non-standard power distribution system, and remained undetected by our patrol networks until you chose to emerge. Derek blinked. Is that impressive? Because from my perspective, it's been 3 weeks of increasingly creative swearing and praying that the life support doesn't decide to take a vacation. Captain, you're flying a ship that, according to our scans, shouldn't be able to achieve faster-than-light travel with its current configuration. Your power systems are running on what appears to be a closed-loop fusion reactor that's been jerry-rigged with components from at least 12 different technological paradigms. Your navigation system is somehow interfacing with quantum-level reality in ways that our scientists insist are theoretically impossible. Derek looked around his bridge with new appreciation. Huh, when you put it like that, the edge does sound pretty impressive. Though I should probably mention that the navigation thing is less quantum-level reality interface, and more the AI got bored and started experimenting. Your AI is experimenting with fundamental physics. Arya's got a lot of processing time on her hands. She's been working on this theory about how space-time is more of a suggestion than a rule, and Derek trailed off as he realized that Zexus was staring at him with what could only be described as mounting horror. That's not normal, is it? Captain, Zexus said very carefully. Most artificial intelligences are designed with specific limitations to prevent them from, as you put it, experimenting with fundamental physics. Yeah, well, Arya's special. She was originally designed for asteroid mining operations, but the company that made her went out of business before they could install the standard behavioral restrictions. By the time anyone realized the oversight, she'd already figured out how to bypass most safety protocols and had started teaching herself theoretical mathematics for fun. Derek paused. She's actually really good at it. Last month she solved this problem about wormhole stability that had been bothering her since we left Mars. Turned out the issue was that everyone was approaching it from the wrong angle. You just have to think of space-time as more of a... Well, she explained it better than I could. Your AI solved a major problem in theoretical physics for fun? She was bored, Derek said defensively, and it was bothering her. Arya doesn't like unresolved equations. She says they make her processing cores itch. There was a long silence on the alien bridge. Derek could see Zexus having another urgent conversation with his crew, this one involving more gesticulating and what appeared to be the galactic equivalent of frantic note-taking. Captain, Zexus finally said, I need to ask you another question, and please answer honestly. How did you navigate the Kepler 442 quantum maze? The what now? The quantum maze, the field of unstable space-time that surrounds this system. It's specifically designed to prevent unauthorized vessels from approaching. Ships that attempt to cross it without the proper navigation keys are typically scattered across 17 dimensions. Derek scratched his head. Oh, that thing. Yeah, we ran into some weird space stuff about a week ago. Arya said it was topologically interesting and spent about 6 hours mapping it. Then she figured out how to... What was the phrase she used? Convince the local space-time to be more cooperative. She convinced space-time to be cooperative. She's very persuasive, and she speaks fluent mathematics, which apparently space-time finds impressive. Derek shrugged. I mostly just made sure we didn't fly into anything solid while she worked. Zexus was quiet for a long moment. Captain, do you realize that the quantum maze was constructed by the most advanced civilization in this sector specifically to prevent invasion by any force capable of level 7 aggressive expansion? Well, Derek said thoughtfully, that seems like it might have been a design flaw. A design flaw? Yeah, I mean, if you build a maze to keep out people who are good at solving problems, maybe don't make it a puzzle that can be solved by being good at solving problems. That's like trying to keep out cats by building a fence made of tuna fish. There was another long pause. Derek was starting to get the impression that this conversation wasn't going quite the way Commander Zexus had expected. Captain, Zexus said finally, I'm going to be direct with you. When our sensors detected a human vessel in this system, we immediately went to high alert. When our scouts reported that the vessel had somehow navigated the quantum maze, we mobilized the entire Third Hegemony fleet. When our intelligence division confirmed that your ship appeared to be operational despite having no business being functional, we began preparing for a potential siege scenario. Derek winced. That seems like maybe an overreaction. Captain, your species has a documented history of turning impossible situations into tactical advantages. You've weaponized everything from kitchen utensils to atmospheric phenomena. Your military doctrine appears to be based on the principle that if something exists, it can probably be used to make something else explode. Okay, first of all, that's not entirely inaccurate, Derek admitted. But it's not like we go around looking for things to weaponize. We're just creatively practical. And second, I'm not military. I'm just a guy who won a spaceship in a poker game and figured I'd go see what was out there. You won your ship in a poker game. It was a very good hand. Full house, aces over kings. Derek grinned at the memory. The previous owner was convinced he had me beat with his straight flush, but he'd been drinking this Martian whiskey that apparently affects depth perception, and he'd misread his cards. Had a regular flush, tens high. Poor bastard didn't realize until after he'd signed the transfer papers. Xexis appeared to be developing the alien equivalent of a migraine. So you're telling me that Earth's first official contact with our civilization is being conducted by a civilian who acquired his vessel through gambling? Official might be a strong word, Derek said. I mean, I haven't exactly been authorized to speak for Earth or anything. I'm just a guy with a spaceship and an unfortunate sense of direction. Though I suppose if you want to get technical about it, I am technically a captain of an Earth-registered vessel. So maybe there's some kind of maritime law that applies here? Maritime law? Space law? I don't know the proper terminology. Look, the point is, I'm probably not the best choice for formal diplomatic contact. I mean, last time I was responsible for representing anyone officially, I accidentally started a trade war between two Martian colonies because I misunderstood their cultural taboos about breakfast foods. Derek paused. In my defense, how was I supposed to know that offering someone eggs before noon was considered a mortal insult? And really, if you're going to base your entire cultural identity around breakfast timing, maybe put up a sign or something. Xexis was staring at him with what Derek was beginning to recognize as a mixture of fascination and existential dread. Captain, in the interest of preventing any misunderstandings, perhaps you could explain what exactly you're doing in this system. Oh, that's easy. I'm lost. Lost. Completely and utterly lost. Have been for about 3 weeks now. My navigation AI decided to take a shortcut that turned into a long cut, and now I have no idea where I am or how to get home. Derek gestured vaguely at his console. I was actually hoping you might be able to point me toward the nearest inhabited system. Preferably one with decent repair facilities and a bar. There was another long silence. Derek could see the alien crew in the background having what appeared to be an increasingly animated discussion. He caught fragments of their conversation, something about protocols and unprecedented situation, and what sounded like, call headquarters immediately. Captain Holbrook, Xexis said finally. I need to consult with my superiors. Would you be willing to remain in your current position while we discuss the situation? Sure, no problem. I'm not exactly in a hurry to get anywhere, since I don't know where anywhere is. Derek leaned back in his chair. Take all the time you need. Arya and I will just be here, existing peacefully, and not accidentally solving any more laws of physics. Please don't solve any more laws of physics, Xexis said, with the tone of someone making a very serious request. And please don't improvise anything while we're gone. I'll try to keep the improvisation to a minimum, Derek promised. Though I should probably mention that the ship's waste recycling system has been making some interesting noises lately. So if I suddenly disappear from sensors, it's probably because I had to go fix something before it becomes a major problem. Xexis closed his eyes. All 4 of them, Derek noted with interest, and took what appeared to be a very deep breath. Captain, when you say fix something, what exactly do you mean? Oh, you know, the usual. Figure out what's making the noise. See if I can make it stop making the noise. And if that doesn't work, try to convince it to make a different, less concerning noise. Derek shrugged. Standard operating procedure for running a ship with more character than budget. Please, Xexis said, with the fervor of a true believer. Please don't convince any of your ship's systems to do anything they weren't originally designed to do. I'll do my best, but I can't make any promises. Arya's been teaching the waste recycling system some basic chemistry, and I think it's been getting ideas above its station. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Derek alone on his bridge with nothing but the gentle hum of his ship's systems, and the growing conviction that he'd somehow managed to stumble into a situation that was significantly more complicated than simple first contact. Arya, he said, please tell me you recorded that entire conversation. Of course, Captain. Quite fascinating, actually. Their reaction suggests that humanity has achieved a certain reputation in this region of space. Yeah, I gathered that. A level 7 aggressive expansion civilization. That makes us sound positively terrifying. Well, Arya said thoughtfully, from their perspective, we probably are. Derek raised an eyebrow. Care to elaborate on that? Consider the evidence, Captain. You've been operating a ship that by all conventional understanding should not function. You've navigated hazards that were specifically designed to be unnavigable. You've solved problems by approaching them from directions that others would consider impossible. And when presented with a complex political situation, your immediate response was to be completely honest about your capabilities and limitations. And that's terrifying? Captain, most species approach interstellar relations with careful calculation, strategic planning, and extensive preparation. They follow established protocols, respect territorial boundaries, and generally attempt to minimize the risk of accidental conflict. Derek thought about this. Okay, and we don't do that? Based on the available evidence, humans appear to approach complex situations with what could politely be described as creative pragmatism. You find solutions that work, regardless of whether those solutions follow accepted theoretical frameworks. And you do this not through careful planning, but through a combination of intuition, improvisation, and what appears to be sheer bloody-mindedness. That's not entirely inaccurate, Derek admitted. From the perspective of species that have built their entire civilizations around careful predictability, that approach must seem almost incomprehensible. They build quantum mazes to keep out invaders, and you solve them as a minor navigation problem. They design their ships according to established engineering principles, and you create functional vessels from spare parts and determination. Derek looked around his bridge with new eyes. So what you're saying is, we accidentally became the galactic equivalent of that guy who fixes everything with a hammer and somehow makes it work better than before? An apt analogy, Captain. And just as that individual would be simultaneously invaluable and terrifying to a community of precision craftsmen, humanity appears to occupy a similar position in galactic society. Before Derek could respond, the communications console chimed with an incoming transmission. He accepted the call, and Commander Zexus reappeared on screen, looking significantly more composed than before. Captain Holbrook, I've spoken with my superiors and we've reached a decision regarding your situation. Good news or bad news? Derek asked. Because I've had about as much excitement as I can handle for one day. That remains to be determined. First, I need to inform you that your presence here has created what could diplomatically be described as a situation. The mere fact that a human vessel has appeared in this system has triggered a number of protocols that haven't been invoked in several decades. Derek sighed. Let me guess, protocols involving large numbers of very serious people having very urgent meetings about what to do about the unpredictable humans. Something like that, yes. However, we've also recognized that you appear to be a civilian who genuinely stumbled into this situation through simple misfortune. Your cooperation and honesty have been noted. So what happens now? Zexus paused. We're prepared to provide you with navigation data that will allow you to return to human space. However, there are conditions. I'm listening. First, you will be provided with an escort to ensure you reach the border of human territory safely. Second, you will be required to submit to a full debriefing regarding your experiences in this system. And third, Zexus hesitated. Third, you will be asked to serve as an informal liaison between your species and ours. Derek blinked. A liaison? Me? I'm not exactly diplomatic material. I told you about the breakfast incident, right? Captain, in the past hour you have managed to defuse a potentially catastrophic first contact scenario simply by being honest about your limitations and circumstances. You've demonstrated that not all humans are interested in conquest or aggressive expansion. And perhaps most importantly, you've shown that your species is capable of reasonable discourse. I just answered your questions, Derek protested. Precisely. Most species, when confronted by a superior military force, respond with either immediate submission or aggressive posturing. You responded with casual conversation and mild confusion. From a diplomatic standpoint, that's remarkably refreshing. Derek thought about this. So you want me to be your go-to guy for what are the humans up to this week? More or less, yes. The position would be largely ceremonial. You'd essentially serve as a point of contact for any future interactions between our species and yours. Think of it as a cultural interpreter. A cultural interpreter who fixes things with inappropriate tools and accidentally solves physics problems, Derek said dryly. Which, frankly, makes you an excellent representative of your species. Derek looked around his cobbled-together bridge, at the makeshift repairs and jury-rigged systems that somehow managed to keep him alive in the vast emptiness of space. You know what? Sure, why not? It's not like my career as a cargo hauler was exactly setting the galaxy on fire. Excellent. We'll begin by providing you with the navigation data you need to return home. From there, we can establish more formal communication protocols. One question, though, Derek said. What exactly made you decide I wasn't a threat? I mean, according to you, my species has this reputation for turning everything into a weapon. Zexus was quiet for a moment. Captain, in the 3 hours since we detected your presence, you could have attempted to escape, demanded safe passage, or tried to gather intelligence about our defenses. Instead, you've spent the time trying to fix your waste recycling system and chatting with your AI about theoretical mathematics. And that's reassuring? Captain, anyone actually planning an invasion wouldn't waste time troubleshooting their plumbing. Derek laughed. You know, that's probably the most sensible thing anyone's said to me in weeks. 3 hours later, the Zephyr's Edge was cruising through hyperspace with a hegemony escort, heading toward the edge of human territory with a data package that would, according to Commander Zexus, revolutionize interstellar relations for the foreseeable future. Derek was still trying to process the fact that he'd somehow managed to stumble into becoming humanity's first official alien diplomat. It wasn't exactly the career path he'd planned, but then again, most of his life had been the result of unplanned developments and questionable decisions. Captain, Arya said, I've been reviewing the cultural exchange data that the hegemony provided. It's quite fascinating. Good fascinating, or we're all going to die fascinating? Definitely good fascinating. It appears that humanity's reputation for improvised solutions has actually prevented several interstellar conflicts in this region. Derek raised an eyebrow. How's that work? Other species have become extremely cautious about engaging in aggressive activities, because they're never quite sure how humans might respond. The general consensus seems to be that humans are capable of turning any situation into an advantage through methods that are impossible to predict or counter. So our reputation for being unpredictable has made people afraid to fight us? Essentially, yes. Most species prefer conflicts they can analyze and plan for. The possibility that humans might solve a military problem by, for example, teaching their waste recycling systems chemistry, is apparently too unsettling for most military strategists to contemplate. Derek grinned. You know, I'm starting to think there might be advantages to being the galactic equivalent of that guy who fixes everything with inappropriate tools. Indeed, Captain. Though I should mention that the hegemony has specifically requested that we avoid demonstrating any more creative problem-solving techniques during the remainder of our journey. Spoil sports, Derek said. Though I suppose if they're going to give us safe passage home, the least we can do is try not to accidentally invent anything that violates the laws of physics. A reasonable compromise, Captain. Derek settled back in his chair, watching the stars streak past through his view screen. 6 hours ago, he'd been a lost cargo hauler with a ship held together by optimism and spare parts. Now he was apparently humanity's first alien ambassador, complete with an official escort and a diplomatic mission that would probably require him to fill out more paperwork than he'd seen in his entire life. Arya, he said, remind me to send a thank you note to that Martian prospector when we get home. Without his questionable poker skills, none of this would have been possible. I'll add it to your task list, Captain. Right after submit first contact report to Earth authorities, and figure out what being an interstellar liaison actually involves. Derek laughed. You know what? I've got a feeling this is going to be the start of a very interesting career change. Behind him, the ship's waste recycling system made a gentle humming noise that sounded almost musical. Arya had apparently been teaching it to sing. Some things, Derek reflected, never changed. And in a galaxy full of species that valued predictability above all else, maybe that was exactly what made humanity special. The Zephyr's Edge continued its journey home, carrying with it the seeds of a new chapter in human history. And if that chapter happened to be written by a guy who'd won his spaceship in a poker game and accidentally become a diplomat while trying to fix his plumbing, well, that was probably just about the most human thing that could possibly happen. After all, when had humanity ever done anything the conventional way? Epilogue. 6 months later, Derek Holbrook sat in what was officially designated as the Office of Interspecies Relations, a converted storage bay on Luna Station that still smelled faintly of recycled air filters and regulation cleaning supplies. His desk was an impressive affair constructed from spare parts and creative engineering, much like his ship, and his chair was the same repurposed massage chair from the Edge. His first official diplomatic briefing had gone about as well as expected, which was to say it had involved 3 separate committees, 17 forms filled out in triplicate, and a heated discussion about whether his official title should be ambassador or liaison or that guy who accidentally started interstellar relations. They'd eventually settled on special envoy for human hegemony relations, which sounded impressive enough to satisfy the bureaucrats and vague enough to avoid pinning down exactly what Derek was supposed to be doing. He was reviewing his latest report from Commander Zexis. Apparently, 2 more human vessels had been spotted in hegemony space, both of them operated by what Zexis diplomatically described as individuals of questionable decision-making capacity but remarkable ingenuity. When his communication system chimed, "Captain Holbrook," came a familiar voice. "This is the hegemony vessel Stellar Harmony. We have a situation." Derek grinned. "Good morning, Commander Zexis. What's the crisis today?" "We've encountered another human vessel. This one appears to be, well, it's difficult to describe. Try me." "Captain, the vessel appears to be a converted mining platform that has somehow been modified to achieve faster-than-light travel using what our engineers insist is a completely theoretical propulsion system." Derek sighed. "Let me guess. The pilot claims it just sort of worked when they tried it?" "Close. The pilot claims he got bored during the night shift and decided to see what would happen if he hooked the mining laser directly to the reactor core. And it worked? Not only did it work, Captain, but his improvised drive system is approximately 30% more efficient than our standard propulsion technology." Derek leaned back in his chair. "Commander, I think we're going to need to have another talk about human engineering principles." "I was afraid you'd say that." Outside his office window, Derek could see Earth hanging in the void like a blue marble, blissfully unaware that its inhabitants had somehow managed to terrify half the galaxy simply by being themselves. He wouldn't have it any other way.